Welcome, everyone. Today, myself, Josh Larky, and our own best ball contributor, the winner of Best Ball Mania 2, Liam Murphy. Many of you know him as Chess Liam based on his username. We are streaming a Best Ball Resurrection draft on Underdog Fantasy. Promo code 33rd gets you 100% deposit match up to $100. Let's get right down to it. This will be scoring that begins in week 6. And we're doing this in part because I just dropped rest of season rankings in a trade value chart on the 33team.com that's free to view. And let's sort of battle test, see how some of these rankings look, see how Liam and I agree and disagree about some player values rest of season.
We're on the clock here at the 105. What's up, everybody? Bijan is a contending play for me. Just like he gets the Bears week 17. How do you feel about that?
I have him as my fourth most valuable player rest of season. So getting him at the 5th pick, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I just wrote an article that's going to drop on the 33rd team, and it's touching on Best Ball Resurrection. At part of it, I touch on the players I would like week 17. And I mean, both the guys who went next to each other in these drafts, if healthy, Austin Eckler gets the Broncos week 17. And then Bijan gets the Bears, which is two just like blow up spots. Which player would you take, all else equal? And let's assume Tyler Algier is out of the picture by then. Let's assume it's the Bijan show.
Yeah, I think I'd slightly lean Bijan simply because we know that his touch ceiling in a game is higher. We like the touchdown upside of Eckler, but I think just in terms of actual touches, Eckler can't really have a game with 24 carries and 7 targets like Bijan can. So 2 premium matchups. I think I'm leaning Bijan there. Is that where you're at, or would you go the other way?
It's tough, man, because this Broncos defense is like historically bad, you know? How do you allow 70 points? But on the other hand, I don't know if the Bijan pick is just more fun or what is it, but I mean, he's a top 10 running back right now in the season with no touchdowns, right? And just feels like the blow up games are coming for him. Although Arthur Smith is not exactly a coach I want to hitch my teams to. I think looking at the market, and I'll show some of the players here, a lot has changed from BBM4 season. One player I wanted to talk about to you, because in my draft today, I pulled the 104 and I took Jefferson there. And then at the second round, I wanted to take Devin Achane there. I think he's going by now. And I wanted to take him in the third round. He got scooped up at the 2-3 turn. So to me, clearly this is a player rising in cost. I just saw Ken Walker go at the 1-2 turn. I think I far prefer Achane to Ken Walker. Where are you at on the rookie superstar here, Achane?
Yeah, I think they're relatively similar players. So I put out this tweet that was apparently very controversial. I was like, here's the running backs I think are confidently players I prefer to Devon Achane. I think we're saying his name right. Maybe not. Still not fully sure, but we'll call him DA. And the only 4 running backs over him would be McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard. In my rest of season rankings, I have Achane below Kenneth Walker, but that's more because I have to factor in both my stances and the public. For something like this that's so heavily weighted with 1 week scoring, like a best ball tournament, then I think we actually want to look at like the 1 week ceiling. And at this point, what we saw from Achane, I didn't look at it for half PPR, which is underdog, but it wouldn't have changed much. Didn't have that many catches.
It was
but,
like 49 points. It was 49 points.
When I looked for PPR leagues, what he scored 2 weeks ago was the 10th most over the past 10 full seasons by any skill player. So the fact that he has essentially like this Tyreek Hill ceiling, we should want that at the running back position. So I think you could talk me into him being the 5th most valuable running back in this format.
Are you okay with taking him now and quote unquote reaching by ADP?
Yeah, let's see who else there is.
There's CeeDee Lamb, there's Jalen Waddle, there's Chris Olave, there's Jalen Hurts.
I think the 2 players I'd consider here would be Hurts and Olave, but I like Achane. He's the fun pick here.
Yeah, let's do the fun pick here.
His ADP is going to rise.
just getting your bookend running backs with two guys with huge weekly ceilings. And honestly, what makes me so into Achane is that he's just the goal line back in Miami right now. Plus, Mostert fumbled twice against Buffalo, two back-breaking fumbles. They recovered one of them. Just seems like he's an ascending player. I don't think Jeff Wilson plays this week, but when he comes, I don't think he'll be a zero on the offense. If there wasn't those other guys, though, I mean, him over Swift, yeah, he's not getting touchdowns taken from Jalen Hurts. Him over Ken Walker. Ken Walker's sharing that workload with Charbonnet, and it's so early in the season as is where it's not impossible Charbonnet takes some goal line work.
Yeah,
Even him
parallel. I was gonna say a parallel I've thought of is everyone's always like, "Oh, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel's part of that tree." I think another parallel we can make is just like the contingent upside due to injuries. Where
yeah.
one reason we like San Francisco players in best ball is one guy gets hurt and the others go nuclear. We saw Kittle have almost 100 yards 2 weeks ago because Ayuk missed the contest. And with Achane, he is sharing a backfield with Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, two of the running backs with the longest injury histories in the NFL. It would not surprise me if one or both of them is injured by week 15, and that you're just seeing Achane get a ton of touches since I was a little concerned how many touches they'd be willing to give him in a game, given that he's 190 pounds. And in week 3, we saw him get 18 carries and 4 catches. So I think they are legally allowed to give him 20 touches in a game, which, of course, we absolutely love.
Do you think the goal line back usage from him is here to stay? It's kind of like, it's not traditional goal line usage where it's just like ram it up the middle. It's run Tyreek in motion and then run Achane across the formation. And then defenses are like, oh crap, these two guys are really fast and on the edge.
I think if he keeps playing like he does, it'll stick. Ultimately, if you're successful at the goal line, why would a smart play caller like Mike McDaniel do anything different? So that's kind of how I'm viewing that right now.
This pick for me, I want to say is Ayuk if we're considering week 17, where he gets the Commanders week 17, and they've been awful against the deep ball. Who else would be in consideration for you? Puka Nacua there, Josh Jacobs, Debo.
We have 2 running backs. I don't think we need a third right now. I would either go Puka, Ayuk, or Debo, just those top receivers. I really like Ayuk as well. I think
we'll leave Ayuk in there, but let's talk about Puka because the question is going to be what happens when Cooper Kupp comes back? What's your take on that?
I'm not going to claim like I know what's going to happen.
No one does. But like, let's try to spitball together.
But we have started to see a trend over the past decade where you can see 2 receivers producing pretty elite top 10, top 12 fantasy points alongside each other. I'm inclined to think Cooper Kupp is just a much better receiver. I haven't seen anything from Puka that makes me think that he is better than Cooper Kupp at literally anything. But one thing that we did see 2 years ago when Cooper Kupp had his absolutely historic season, nearly 2,000 yards, sets the fantasy points record for a receiver in a season. The first 8 games before Robert Woods went down, he was a borderline fantasy wide receiver 1 during that stretch. And I think people forget that because everyone was kicking themselves and had framed it as, damn it, I took Robert Woods instead of Cooper Kupp. Look at Cooper Kupp's fantasy points. And I was like, guys, Robert Woods is still giving you 15 fantasy points. That wasn't a bad pick. He's outproducing most of the receivers in this range. He just didn't happen to outproduce his teammate who went 3 picks later. And like, yeah, you should have taken Kupp over Woods, but Woods in a vacuum was actually like a perfectly fine pick prior to his ACL tear 2 years ago. So the way I'm seeing is that we could see something just like that. I think Stafford's actually playing some of the best football of his life. I know Ryan Reynolds, 14, and is still alive to talk about it. He thinks that Stafford is essentially having a career year right now in terms of his processing speed and the fact that he's doing all of this. And this is one of the better passing offenses without their best receiver. So just imagine like the upside of like the entire offense when Stafford returns. So I actually have kind of become a Puka guy where I think he and Ayuk are pretty similar at this point, even though one of the guys is obviously Brandon Ayuk, and then the other guy is a 5th-round rookie who kind of came out of nowhere.
I would take Puka if I knew Kupp was not coming back. I mean, Puka's a 1st-round pick, right? Like he's right next to Diggs and Keenan for me. With Kupp coming back, I think what you said is the prevailing wisdom where Puka kind of a Robert Woods plus and Kupp maybe a Kupp minus where, you know, they're just going to eat into each other a little bit. I still think Tutu Atwell would get some spike weeks where, you know, is he going to get 9 targets a game? Probably not. maybe down to the 6 range, but he's got so much speed where if defenses are drawing coverage to Cup and Puka, Tutu can burn you. I think Van Jefferson hits the bench for me there. But it's exciting, man. The Rams just as a whole are real exciting. I didn't draft enough Puka at all in BBM4 land. Were you on him?
No, that was not a player I was interested in. The history of round 5 type rookie receivers is pretty bleak. And I don't think any of us knew this Rams offense would be this good. Not just the fact that like Stafford looks healthy, but that the offensive line has been holding up well enough. Because that was one of the
Yeah.
big concerns was that ultimately it doesn't matter how amazing Matthew Stafford is. If he doesn't have time to throw, if he's getting hit constantly, that's a problem. And we've actually seen like I think the 2 biggest surprises for like O lines would be the Rams and the Cardinals, both having surprisingly competent ones.
We're coming up on the clock right now.
Yeah.
Players I'm throwing in the queue for us include Christian Watson, Aaron Jones, Kyron Williams, and James Cook. I think we tie break towards wide receiver there. Are you still in on Christian Watson? He's finally fully healthy, it seems.
Yeah, I think my 2 receiver picks here to be either Watson or Pittman. I've been very impressed with Pittman's role, double-digit targets, 3 or 4 games, and Watson, I really like too. I think we can just stick with Watson. Jordan Love, a little bit better than advertised. We know that Christian Watson can drop 102 touchdowns on 4 or 5 targets. We don't dislike that. And I think there's some contingent upside where if something happens to Romeo Dobbs or Jaden Reed, then Watson can go pretty nuts. Like we saw when Watson was out, that Love is just good enough to kind of elevate those 2. So I think overall, like for season long, we hate that we didn't get him for 3 weeks with the injury. But I think if we're starting in week 6, he's basically like if he was going round 4 before the season began, when we didn't know if Jordan Love would be competent, and now Love is competent, he shouldn't essentially go at pick 44, which is the same as he went this summer. He should be going a little sooner, is how I'm thinking about it. Because ultimately, like our fears have been eradicated. Jordan Love is fine.
Yeah, I'm excited about him. I think I don't think Romeo Dobbs has been all that great. And just the weekly ceiling of our team is insane right now with Ayuk, Watson, Achane, and Bijan. On the board right now, for me, I know we have running
You don't
back.
want Sam Laporta. We don't want a little Sam Laporta action.
Pittman's still there. I'm into Pittman. Breece Hall is there too, and reports are he's going to get 100% of the workload now. You want to just go to the wide receiver there?
I think I'd lean Pittman. Yeah, my concern
We'll
with Breece Hall is that it really seems like the Jets want Zach Wilson at quarterback, and ultimately, when you have such a good defense,
he looked good against the Chiefs, man. What was that?
I agree. Best game I have ever seen from him. I hope the momentum carries over. I think it will for week 5, Denver. The problem is scoring for this starts in week 6 when he's already played Denver in week 5.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see 2 career games from him, and then we're probably going to get a lot more Zach Wilson. Ultimately, he's one of the slowest processors that I've ever seen at the quarterback position. He doesn't have size. Not a Zach Wilson guy over here.
My thesis on him was that he doesn't actually like football, and so he usually doesn't watch game tape. But knowing that Taylor Swift was going to be at the game, they were playing the Chiefs, he's like, okay, this is my shot. Like I gotta look confident tonight. And he did. And maybe it was actually either Aaron Rodgers being his OC that game, his offensive coordinator, or maybe he just realizes he has nothing to lose and was just gripping and ripping it. It's going to be exciting to see. He gets Denver this week, but after that, was it just a 1-week blip, or could he have actually turned the corner? I really like our team. Again, the weekly upside. Michael Pittman, I don't know if I would say he has quite the weekly upside of an Ayuk or Watson, but at the same time, he's playing in a really fast-paced offense with a quarterback we're excited about. Anthony Richardson is all the way up at the QB 7. I think it's a tough, him versus Herbert. Maybe give me Richardson there, as crazy as it sounds. Where is he at for you?
Yeah, I have him just a touch below Herbert. When I had my rest of season rankings, I thought there was the big 5 of Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, Lamar, and Herbert. And then one tier below, I had Tua and Richardson, which actually is kind of sort of how this draft went, where Tua and Richardson go just a touch
Yeah.
after those first guys. So that's actually exactly how I had it when I dropped my rankings. I had not looked at the resurrection ADP. It looks like we are independently in agreement, myself and these underdog drafters. That's kind of cool. With Richardson, I think the weekly upside's there. My
Oh
one
yeah.
concern is still just going to be, can this guy stay healthy and finish games? Because the play style that he has right now is it's very like Josh Allen, Cam Newton-esque. And I think he's going to be okay. But part of what we loved about the first couple weeks was that both full games now, he's had at least 10 carries. He's been inviting contact. He had what seemed like a micro concussion week 1, then an actual concussion week 2.
A dumb hit too in like garbage time.
Yeah, I think essentially his long-term success with the Colts is probably going to take a couple fantasy points away from what we've seen. But at the same time, like, we can't hate a guy who's putting up like 23 fantasy points a game in their early season as a rookie. So
No, I
I
love him.
think like for best ball, I think those big 5 quarterbacks should all be pretty close like they are. I think ultimately,
I,
like, those are the 7 guys that I can see. I think you could throw like Cousins and Fields in maybe, but it's more like those are the 7 where you can see them dropping 35 points without too much effort. And it's like, this is the quarterback you needed to win this week.
If you wanted to tell me you prefer Richardson over Mahomes, I would listen to you. Just
Yes.
because, I mean, even Josh Allen is not rushing that much this year. Mahomes actually has more rushing yards than Allen and Hurts this year.
Mhm.
I was looking at that the other day.
Yeah,
Kind of
he's pacing
surprising.
for 650 rushing yards this year, which would be by far a career high for Mr. Mahomes.
A sign that was, historically he only runs in like big games or when the Chiefs need it, but maybe just a sign that he knows the Chiefs are not great on offense and he needs to be doing that.
Mhm.
Jordan Addison feels like a strong pick to me.
Yeah, I
Um,
like Addison. I like Cousins. I think Cousins, like we talked about before, he's kind of like the last guy that I think has this
I
massive
wouldn't take
weekly
him without a
ceiling.
pass catcher though. Um,
Yeah, we pick. Oof.
we could maybe get
Let's
Cousins
let's take
next.
let's take
Yeah,
Addison now, because if we miss on Cousins but we have Addison, we're okay. If we have Cousins without Jefferson, Addison, or Hawkinson, then the team looks pretty terrible. So I
yeah.
think this is the way to go, is that we just cross our fingers. We have a Hurts and a Herbert drafter that have already taken quarterbacks. So hopefully Paper Champion and Javelina do not take
I
Mr.
like
Cousins.
I like Cousins, but obviously we've seen the ceiling from him, but in some ways, it really feels like the quarterbacks that are undervalued to me are guys like CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford is still in the 135s for some
Yeah,
reason.
I love
Like
Stafford at that price.
like those 3 dudes versus why is Cousins in the 70 other than like there's multiple pass catchers, so people are competing for him. Like those
Mhm.
quarterbacks from a weekly perspective, I mean a season long perspective,
Mhm.
seem all very similar bets to me. And Stroud gets the Titans twice in the playoffs, man. Like the Stroud versus
Mhm.
Titans, that could be deciding who wins it all week 17.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. The one other quarterback I'll add that I really like is Russell Wilson. We hate the Broncos defense. Russell Wilson's actually been semi-competent this year. Goes to pick 130. I mean, if anyone can get into a shootout with the Washington Commanders like he did, then I'm pretty confident that regardless of matchup, Russell Wilson's going to have to make stuff happen each week. And I think that's kind of what you want. And I think that's why I like Cousins, is that Cousins is similar, where Cousins is like the better version, where it's still a terrible pass defense that he's playing with. They're going to be trailing a lot, but we know that he can get the team in games. We know that they're just kind of willing to let him sling it.
On the clock for us here, I have 3 players in the queue for us. George Kittle, Hollywood
Mhm.
Brown, or Jacoby Myers. I think I'm Hollywood out of that group. I don't really understand why he's so cheap. Still,
I would go Hollywood here. He's already been like a borderline fantasy wide receiver too. Oh,
Oh,
shit.
aces up, got him.
I was gonna say already like a wide receiver 2 type, and Kyler comes back.
Are you okay with George Kittle to add to our San Francisco stack?
Yeah, that's fine with me. We've
I
only
like
had one good game out of him. But like we talked about before, something
Jacoby
happens.
Myers
Like,
too, like against Indy's secondary week 17 is pretty tempting, but
mhm.
I don't know. Just like closing your eyes and betting on San Fran over Las Vegas feels like the move.
Yeah, we can get Purdy later. And
Yeah.
right now we're kind of building the team where what we're saying is that CMC or Debo goes down. I guess we're probably hoping Debo goes down. I think CMC going down in a weird way would actually hurt this offense more
Or
than if
just
Debo were to miss.
they don't even need to get hurt. It's just that we need, give us a week 16 week from Kittle. And then we already drafted Ayuk for his week 17 matchup against the Commanders in the deep ball. Some of the other guys I like for week 17 that maybe the market is not as much on is DK Metcalf against that Pittsburgh secondary. Like we've just
Mhm.
seen wide receivers in the mold of DK Metcalf light up Pittsburgh. Nico Collins. We already talked about Eckler and Bijan. I don't think we need to say the Miami guys. That's pretty obvious. And Ayuk against Washington. Who are some of the Week 17 players sticking out for you, if any?
I think you nailed most of them.
The
Uh,
Houston guys against Titan secondary, Nico
yeah, I
and
guess
Tank.
Yeah, I guess we could lump in the Houston guys. Those are kind of like the receivers that I'd want to target in the middle rounds. Since
Yeah.
one thing that we've seen out of the Texans that I think has been very promising as a development is that their offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick came from the 49ers. And one thing the 49ers don't do is they never have three receivers on the field. That's why no one ever knows who the wide receiver three is. The 11 personnel with three receivers on the field, that is not something they do very much. The Texans, their default this year has been 11 personnel with three receivers. It's why Tank Dell kind of exploded immediately upon getting playing time, is because he's running a similar amount of routes to Nico Collins, who's running a similar amount of routes to Robert Woods. And I think that's also why Stroud has been doing so well, is that generally when there's more receivers on the field, quarterbacks are going to have more passing yards. So it kind of makes sense why bad offensive line, Damian Pierce has been struggling. Passing offense has been garbage time Olympics at this point. So
I'm
I'm
hoping
a
for
big
Pierce.
Texans guy at this point, just given that you can double stack Stroud
Yeah.
and pretty feasibly like see how that hits.
I'm hopeful for Pierce going forward with uh, Houston's getting both their tackles back this week, I believe. Titus
Mhm.
and
Tunsil.
Tunsil. And so, in positive game scripts, we didn't really get Houston had that positive game script against Jacksonville, which after this, I wanted to ask you about Trevor Lawrence in the Jags. I think the Sharp community is saying that the Jags will be fine, but I've seen some wild trades out there. People trading Calvin Ridley for Nico Collins straight up. Uh, you know, so better days for the Texans with the improved offensive line is the hope for Damian Pierce at least. And then, what's your take on the Jags and the pass game woes?
From all my research, it's just a little bit of unluck, some dropped passes. I think
Yeah.
PFF has like Trevor Lawrence is the second best graded quarterback this year. Watching him play, he's looked very good. We've had a couple really bad drops. There was a Calvin Ridley drop. I think there was a Zay Jones drop. I'm really not that concerned about this offense. I think ultimately we should like that the defense has seemed like there's holes at times, and
Um,
that's kind of what we want.
do you want to grab Sutton here, or do you want to reach on Brock Purdy? We've seen some weird drafting from these guys where this guy took a naked Cousins. The Debo
Everyone
draft.
has everyone has quarterbacks at this point. I think we cross our fingers and we do Purdy with the next pick.
Okay, I just don't even know if Sutton's worth it to me. I'm not as much into like I know everyone said, "Hey, Russ and the Broncos, they've been better than you think." To me, it's just like, man, when your defense is so bad and the team plays really slow for a reason, I would think partially. I mean, there's some good teams playing slow too, like Buffalo, but I think they're playing slow to kind of hide Russ somewhat. You know, how are they losing by so much if their offense is so good? Like if
Yeah,
Bill's
I
defense was so bad, they wouldn't lose by 50.
so I think it's actually kind of two forces at play. I think part of it might be that they're trying to play a little slowly. I think another part is a almost defensive preservation. If you're playing quickly and you have a three and out, your defense is immediately back on the field. This is already a defense that's spending more minutes than pretty much any unit out on the field already. So I think just from that sense, it makes I think it's understandable why, if your defense is struggling that much, why you'd want to play a little slower
But if
on
your
offense.
offense is so good, why are you 3 and outing so much? Like
Mhm.
your offense is not that good.
Yeah.
Is my take.
Yeah, I think their offense is fine. I think it's a roughly league average offense, but even good offenses have 3 and outs, and I think that's pretty disastrous when your defense literally can't get off the field. So I'm not disagreeing that I'm not saying like they have this awesome offense, but I do think it's tough because if we think about just defense players and cardio, these guys are on the field for like 40 minutes a game right now, which is not really all that sustainable long term.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if you just X'd out some teams from drafting any of their players, teams that come to mind, Atlanta, Chicago, maybe Denver, whatever.
Mhm.
I'm not going to deal with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Greg Dulcich, Javonte Williams. Like, who are you happy to have on Denver? I guess Marvin Mims, you're squinting your eyes and being like, maybe he'll get
Mhm.
more playing time. The cheaper guys aren't hurting you too much. Sutton, like he's been good, but then he's also like fumbled. He had some really bad fumbles against the Dolphins, and with the rumblings that the Panthers want a wide receiver, one trade that makes sense to me is Sutton to Carolina. I'm gonna take Purdy with this pick.
Yeah, I think we'd be pretty foolish not to. We waited the round. I think that was the right move. Everyone else had a quarterback. Now we
It
get
would have been
our
nice to go Love
franchise
too,
quarterback.
though. To go Purdy
I
and Love and just not take Sutton.
I think we might still be able to get Love now that everyone has a quarterback. We're just gonna have to see. I don't think it's nearly as important with the shorter sample to stack up quite as many quarterbacks. Have you when you did your
I
draft
no,
this
I
morning,
don't.
did
I
you
don't
take
agree with
3 or did
that.
you stick with 2? Because I don't think you need 3 quarterbacks in this format, even if
I
you
would
didn't
be
take an elite
okay
option.
just going Purdy and Love and being done. But to me, that the weekly upside of Watson is so correlated to Love being good that like it just makes it easier for you where you don't have to get as many picks right.
Mhm.
Um, like Tutu Atwell, I think I prefer Tutu just straight up over Cortland Sutton. Where are you at on those two guys?
I think they're pretty similar. Tutu is about to get Cooper Kupp back, whereas at least with Sutton, it's kind of set who's on the team.
Yeah.
I think Marvin Mims runs more routes as the season goes along, which can hurt him, but I
Or help.
it could help him. I also think just in general, Russ has looked so much better this year than last year. He hasn't looked like Seahawks Russ, but I do think I have some faith that this offense will just keep getting better as Russ gets more used to Sean Payton and his system. And I don't see this defense improving all that much. I don't think it's going to look historically bad by the end of the season at quite the rate it has so far. But I still think we're going to look up and say, you know what, that was one of the 2 or 3 best defenses to target in DFS each week, to target with any kind of best ball stacks on a weekly basis. So I think ultimately, like I want to leave most of these drafts with some kind of Denver player or someone that's playing Denver.
Now you live in Denver. Is this a fandom thing with you or?
No, 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 no. Whoa, 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 whoa. I do not want to be tied to this franchise. I grew up in San Diego, so I'm a desperate diehard Chargers fan. Uh, they left me like my ex girlfriend. They're now in Los Angeles, but I came begging back, and I think Justin Herbert ultimately was just too fun of a player, and I felt like
He
I
is
couldn't
fun.
quit my childhood team. So I'm a Chargers fan. I cannot ever root for the division rival Broncos.
All right, not a homer thing from Josh here.
No.
I don't know. To me, I think more often than not in this draft situation for anyone, like I would take Purdy here, knowing that personally, I just don't value Sutton that high. Now they do get the Chargers week 17 if he's still on the team. I would go like
Mhm.
Purdy Love there. I would go Purdy 2-2. I
We're
would
getting
go,
close. 2 more
yeah.
picks. Will he make it back to us?
But even there, like I would maybe go Purdy. And then in some drafts, you're gonna get the CMC drafter who, because in best ball land, one quarterback is not enough. We know that we're gonna be
Mhm.
drafting 2, 3 minimum. And maybe I'm just scarred from the late season drafts where the casual community, ooh, one pick from us.
Wow.
That
Wasn't meant to
hurts.
be. Yeah, I
Um,
I think
JSN
Watson's
there?
interesting in terms of
Or
upside. I
who?
like JSN. I think Deshaun Watson.
Rasheed Rice?
I like Rashee Rice. Russ could always be our quarterback too because we have Sutton now. I
Yes.
think with this build, I would go either JSN or Rashee Rice.
We're going
I
Rice.
What I like is that over the last 2 weeks, Rashee Rice and Sky Moore have run the same number of routes. So we're seeing Rashee Rice kind of like at least a year ahead of schedule of Sky Moore. And there's clearly room for a receiver to be fantasy relevant here after the years of Tyreek Hill and after Juju Smith-Schuster quietly had pretty much 80 catches and 950 yards last year. It was very quiet because he only scored 3 times, but Rashee Rice is a pretty big body, and I think in general we shouldn't expect 3 touchdowns from a starting Chiefs receiver over a full season. So I think like in terms of second half pace, I think we could see Rashee Rice pace for 75, 80 catches, close to 1,000 yards, 8, 9 touchdowns. That's kind of
Yeah,
how I
it
view his upside. Since Sky Moore at this point hasn't fired,
so
Marquez
bad.
Valdez-Scantling's been a smaller part of the offense last year. If I remember correctly, I think their leading receiver is Justin Watson right now. As crazy as that is,
Yeah.
he probably
I
goes
mean,
undrafted, but
it feel
technically Chiefs wide receiver 1 right now.
it feels gross to take Rice over JSN, but that's only if you're married to your pre-draft takes at all. If you just totally abandon that, you just came into the season blankly, you would take Rice on the Chiefs, getting an insane target rate when on the field. And I mean, as much as I'm hopeful things get better for JSN, that's wish casting at this point to me. Um, at this pick here, I think it's either Jerick McKinnon or Russ, and I'm okay. I'm not a big Russ guy, but I
Mhm.
think with us having taken Sutton, it makes sense to grab him here. Like
Yeah,
taking Juju and getting Stafford here would have felt better to me, but you know,
I
my
would go Russ here just for the stack, and then we'll end up with our final pick taking another quarterback because of the bye weeks. So we'll
sure.
see who that third quarterback is. But
So the team so far is Brock and Russ at QB, Bijan and Achan at running back, Ayuk, Watson, Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison, Cortland Sutton, Rashee Rice at wideout. I think we're only taking one more wide receiver and maybe zero more. We don't really need to. And Kittle at tight end. With Kittle, it's definitely a 3 tight end team to me, just because he's a spike week guy. He has a high ceiling, but he has a very low floor, as we know.
yeah, at this point, what is it? It's gonna be 3 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends. That's 6. If we go 7 receivers, that is 13, and that would give us 5 running backs with 2 early. I think that's probably the build 3-5-7-3.
Yeah, 7 picks left. Cut 2 off. That's down to 5. Cut that off. I think it's a 3-6-7-3, right? 3,
3-3-5-7-3.
3, 5, 8,
That'd be
11. Yeah,
18.
3, 5, 7, 3. Yes.
Math is always so difficult on air. 3-5-7-3 build, folks, is what we're going to be going for here.
Yeah, that's an exciting build
Mhm.
with Bijan and Achan. I mean, one of the points I made in the article is that I would be a little bit more hesitant to go pure zero RB in the current draft landscape because a lot of the ambiguity is no longer ambiguous, right? Where
Mhm.
if you did zero RB in the offseason, you could take Tyreek Hill and then Christian Watson and Keenan Allen, and then your running backs could still be Achan and Kyron Williams. You could have hit. You could have hit some of
Mhm.
these guys, Jerome Ford, but now you really need injuries where there are still some guys I like for injury upside, but it's not as plentiful to me.
Yeah, I think not only is it just the injuries, but we've kind of seen how these backfields are starting to shake out and where the surprises are. Like we just saw Jaleel McLaughlin go at pick 133.
Yeah,
Nobody
he
knew this was going to be a part of the Broncos offense, but now that we know it's not very exciting. Neither of us are going to be very excited to draft Samaje Perine. So it's very obvious to me now where a lot of these backfields are at. Like you said, like I think Tajay Spears is one of the last interesting guys. There's really like it gets pretty bleak at running back where you're just purely rooting for an injury and there's no actual like you mentioned, there's almost no ambiguity upside as well.
Yeah, I mean, the hate for AJ Dillon's probably gone a little far, but at the same time, he's only scored 15 fantasy points on the season. Um, so maybe not. Let's just take Kincaid here. I still think the Kincaid should be afforded the regular rookie, conditional, where this past week he got 20% target rate and 80% of the
Mhm.
routes. Knox only got 50% of the routes. I don't know if that was a 1
Mhm.
week blip. I think Buffalo is a little bit more matchup dependent than people realize with whether they're going to run 12 personnel or 11. But having tight ends from the 49ers and the Bills offenses just seems like a smart top down bet to me.
I agree. I'm actually pulling it up to see if I remember correctly. Yes, Dalton Kincaid has more receiving yards this year than Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah.
Jackson Smith and Jigba goes many rounds earlier, even though he's wide receiver, not tight end eligible. If we are simply playing the card of what have you done for me recently, JSN has more target competition, plays a position that has a higher threshold for entering your lineup, and has been less productive than Dalton Kincaid. So I think right there, I just spun how I would take Kincaid over JSN rest of season, potentially.
Yeah, and Kincaid is as someone that I'm a Bills fan, I watch all the Bills games. In
Mhm.
another universe, he has at least 3 touchdowns, maybe 4, because week 1 there was like a pre-snap penalty, and
Mhm.
they threw they were going to throw the ball to Kincaid. It looked with Josh's eyes. Another week, or this past week, he threw a touchdown to Stephon. He actually threw a touchdown to Kincaid, and Stephon Diggs ran in front of Kincaid and caught the ball, not really realizing that Kincaid was running the route behind him. And
Yes.
then the other week, he ran a route and was going to get targeted, or no, maybe one just like bounced off his hands or something. So the point is, touchdowns for him and Luke Musgrave come to mind for me, where in another universe with Musgrave, he has like, I don't know, 300 yards in 4 touchdowns because he's been streaking wide open down the middle. And Love has just missed him. In some ways, I think
Mhm.
Watson and Aaron Jones coming back hurts Luke Musgrave, but it should open things up for him too. Where are you at on Musgrave versus Kincaid? It does not make sense to me that Laporta is a 5th-round pick compared to their cost.
I think Laporta's cost makes sense. I just think Musgrave and Kincaid should go a little sooner. Looking in this range, I like Zach Ertz as a third
I
tight
like
end.
Michael Gallup as our last wide receiver. He's looking actually kind of good now
Yeah, he's looked a little better than Brandon Cooks. I'm fine with that. What do you
as
think
our
about
last
Zach Ertz?
wideout.
I like Zach Ertz because he's getting like 8 targets a game. Kyler Murray returns soon.
Well, Kyler returning is what makes me question Zach Ertz, right? Because he's getting those targets, he's not doing anything with it.
We saw that last year though. Kyler
We
Murray's quarterback. Zach Ertz is getting force fed 8 to 10 targets every single game.
I thought that was a Cliff thing though. Like, well, I don't know. I don't know if that's for sure a Kyler thing.
Yeah, well, now we have Jonathan Gannon as coach, and still Zach Ertz playing well ahead of Trey McBride. It is not how I would run this offense, but now we have multiple years of like it's 2 years in a row now where for some reason I guess Zach Ertz went, so we don't have to worry about it. But where Zach Ertz is the 1B receiving option behind Hollywood Brown, as
I just
crazy as that
think,
is for a 33-year-old injured tight end who runs probably a 4.9 at this point of his career.
I mean, with the capital we've invested at tight end, I don't think it's necessary to take Ertz. I still am just not a believer that Ertz is going to be a guy that's going to bury me over the course of a season. You would think he would wear down as the year goes. Um, I mean, this Cardinal situation is so weird. We're like, Josh Dobbs got there with what, like a week to go after Colt McCoy was simply pointing to wide receivers in practice because he couldn't throw the ball anymore. And it's totally possible Josh Dobbs literally only knew Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz are NFL players. Like he doesn't know who Trey McBride is. So I don't know. Maybe he'll come back and smash with Kyler. That's totally possible, I guess. But I guess I'm just betting against it. And I think this pick should more often than not be a wide receiver or running back. Positions we do know can really dry off. Like, tight ends that are drawing live to beat Zach Ertz, Logan Thomas, Tyler Conklin, Durham Smythe. There's guys to like late where not as much at other positions.
Yeah, that's a good point. Out of this running back group that we're looking at, I like Jeff Wilson. We've seen now that 2 Miami Dolphins running backs are allowed to have big fantasy days at once. If something happens to Raheem Mostert, then suddenly it's what we're seeing right now where Mostert and Achane look like awesome fantasy picks right now. So I think in terms of taking down a tournament, having 2 Miami running backs is something that a lot of people might not do. Like that was something I did a lot, and I think you might have done a lot as well this summer, where you're like, I'm just going to lean into like pinballing these Miami running backs.
Yeah.
This kind of format, people are probably going to want to feel like they need to pick and choose one, and I think you can still pinball them and take 2 of them. Where on the rare week Achane doesn't hit, there's a good chance Mostert or Wilson's hitting, since we saw the Dolphins offense get shut down this past weekend and they still put up 20 points against the Bills.
They still put up 400 yards. Yeah. I mean, tight end is pretty, running back is pretty gross. Like, this is a gross list of names. Guys who I think are undervalued. Keaton Mitchell comes to mind. Kendre Miller seems way undervalued, where, give him more of a season to ramp up. AJ Dillon, possible the hate's gone too far, but he's been so bad. I'm down with Jeff Wilson here. The recent report says not practicing yet. So I don't think, we got that report from Drew Rothenhouse, his agent, that, he'll come back week 5, like a month ago, which maybe, I don't know. What's your take? We got a couple guys coming off IR. So let's talk about all of them. There's Jeff Wilson. There's Jelani Woods, who's not practicing yet either, not activated. There's Cooper Kupp. There's Jonathan Taylor. Anyone else? Greg Dulcich. What's your take on these 5 players? Do you know if any of them are coming back soon? Have you read up on it?
I have heard that Taylor and Kupp seem to be the closest. I don't think that's breaking too much news on that front. In terms of who I'm optimistic about, it would also just be Taylor and Kupp. With Jonathan Taylor, the big concern was that this Colts offense just wouldn't be very good, and that Richardson, bless you, would be vulturing him at the goal line. Ultimately, what we've seen with Zach Moss is that a running back in this offense can be pretty. Taylor's better than Zach Moss in every way. And then the same thing with Cooper Kupp versus Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua is in the Cooper Kupp role, and he's looked awesome. Cooper Kupp might even be better than Puka Nacua for fantasy in that role, considering that he's a better player. I don't have too many takes on Greg Dulcich.
I think Greg Dulcich and Jelani Woods, I think they're exciting tight end swings where we know tight end's so barren. Jelani Woods, the most athletic guy, or second most athletic tight end of all time, literally. And yes, he has to beat out some guys for the Colts offense, but it's a pace-up offense. It's a team that we're kind of wanting to bet on in the Colts. They're better than people think. So I'm excited about Woods. Dulcich, too, where it's like, look, his target competition's not that stiff.
I'm going to go Latavius. We'll pause for a second on the clock. I'm going to root for Latavius Murray. We already have Dalton Kincaid. Let's get another Bill. He's their goal line back. Very easy to see him getting 2 touchdowns and entering your lineup on a certain week. Damian Harris went way earlier this summer as the number 2 back there.
He goes in the 200s.
And we kind of seen that Latavius Murray's their number 2 back.
He looks good too.
Damian Harris. And then also James Cook has an outrageously amazing role for fantasy. He's also very small. He's also never had a large workload in college. So this is essentially by far the biggest workload he's ever had. Would not surprise me if he breaks down as the season goes along, and the ageless 33-year-old wonder Latavius Murray, who has at least 700 total yards in 6 of the past 7 seasons, once again has another good year. Big back, does everything at a 6 out of 10 level, and I think coaches just like that.
I totally agree that Latavius would be the guy if something happened to James Cook. He's just more of a pass catcher. He's a great pass blocker is what is going to get him on the field. He's the guy who picks up blitzes. And he's the guy, if you get to Latavius, what you're hedging against is the Stephon Diggs, the Josh Allens of the world, where those teams could be in week 17 quite a bit, where you want leverage off of those teams. So like the Latavius pick, it was possible we got him at ADP here, but one of the points I wrote in the article too is that be aggressive on the guys you feel good about. If you think Achane's going to rise in price, so are others. The points you made about Latavius, others are going to start saying that too. And it's like Latavius versus Chuba Hubbard, Latavius versus Kareem Hunt, Latavius versus Elijah Mitchell. Like these are legit discussions
Mhm.
where it doesn't really make sense why he's a 16th round pick compared to some of these other guys, other than that he's old.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think about it, is that it's just that he sounds gross. But ultimately, if I told you that we got the backup running back with an all-purpose skill set and a top 3 offense in the 15th round, you would probably just be excited. And
Hell
I
yeah.
think that's how we have to think about him. Whereas like AJ Dillon is essentially the backup running back in a less exciting offense. I know his
Yeah.
ADP is earlier, but all else equal, like Latavius Murray has way more fantasy points right now on fewer touches because you want Bills running backs.
Yeah, I mean, you just want players on good teams as well. And I mean, that's kind of a theme of our team where, we have Brock Purdy, we have the Miami running backs, we got a Buffalo running back and tight end, we got a San Fran wide receiver and tight end. And then we have some teams where, at least fantasy wise, you're excited for them. Christian Watson, Michael Pittman, Addison. I wouldn't say the Vikings are a great team, but good for fantasy. Rashee Rice, obviously the Chiefs are good. Michael Gallup. Something on the discussion of the big five elite quarterbacks, which Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Hurts, and Lamar. I mean the big four, excuse me. Seeming like it's going to be tough for those guys to pay off draft costs this year. We saw Allen drop a 40 burger. Are you optimistic on these elite quarterbacks paying off cost? I still think you'd be excited from a playoff perspective if you advance a team, because your team's probably pretty good if they're hard to advance with those teams.
Yeah, I'm still not too worried. It's been only 4 weeks.
You okay with
I
Rico
like Rico
Dowdle here?
Dowdle. We already
Yeah.
have Michael Gallup. Let's get another Cowboy in there. Pollard reminds me a little bit of James Cook, like we talked about Latavius Murray. A running back who's never had a big workload is getting the biggest workload of their career now. They might break down. In terms of the quarterbacks that were drafted early, I'm not that concerned. They're still putting up solid fantasy production through 4 weeks. It's also, again, it's a 4-week sample. The way I
Yeah.
framed Mahomes to somebody, because they were panicking, I was like, Mahomes right now is on pace for 100 carries and 650 rushing yards. If I told you that that was what you might get rushing, you would have taken him in the mid-second round of fantasy drafts. Because one thing we're not concerned about is the passing ceiling from him. We know what he can do already as a passer. We've
I think we're
seen.
concerned about his pass catchers. Very much so.
I would agree. There's definitely some pass catcher concern. It wouldn't surprise me if they try and trade for someone. They're
Who do you
currently
think
in
that
their
could be?
window.
Should we put on our tinfoil hats and try to predict? Who could that be? Some trade deadline guys.
I mean, I still don't know why Mike Evans is on the Buccaneers. I think this madness with
They're
Baker
not going to
Mayfield could
trade him
wear off.
after his start he's had, and like
I
they're in such a bad division, you know.
Yeah, they're what are they, like 3-1 right now? I don't think that lasts, and I
Their
think the
schedule's
Buccaneers
just
would be.
easy.
It is, but I also just don't think this team's all that good, and they haven't faced particularly good teams yet either. So again, like that's going to continue. Schedule is pretty easy, but that's not a team that I'm willing to kind of bet on long term. I think another interesting one, Jacoby Myers,
Ooh,
Devontae Adams.
they wouldn't do an in division trade though. Dawson
Probably not
Knox
going to the
there.
Chiefs, but I think like those are guys that could be available for teams looking.
Conklin, Knox, and Smythe are there at tight end.
I think you have it how I'd have it. I'd probably just go Knox. Let's take another Buffalo Bill.
Yeah, I
We
like
now
it.
have every single Buffalo Bills tight end touchdown, plus George Kittle, who has the highest ceiling at the tight end position out there. He's kind of been the only guy that we can see actually outscore Kelsey in a week.
Man, quarterback is pretty gross here. I have it right now. Jimmy G, Bryce Young, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Desmond Ritter.
I would go Jimmy Garoppolo here. We
If
like his top
he
two
might not
receivers.
be there though.
Yeah, we like his top two receivers, and we like that they don't have a good pass defense or just good defense in general. I think my next pick would probably be Bryce Young, simply because the
Yeah.
Panthers, all the rumors are we are trying to trade for a number one receiver right now. And apparently they want to do that immediately for this season to kind of expedite the development of Bryce Young. And again, like we're trying to figure out who it is, but like if we knew that Mike Evans was suddenly on the Panthers or something like that, we would probably be taking Bryce Young quite a bit earlier in these drafts. Given that he's a rookie, rookies usually get better as the season goes along. Like when he returns from the ribs fracture, it could be T. Higgins. I know the rumors are swirling that T. Higgins will not be a Bengal long term. They will not sign it. He will not get extended.
They
I think
drafted
there's a
all
few
those
guys.
wide receivers in the draft this year too.
Mhm. So yeah, I think it would be Garoppolo and Bryce Young, kind of like how you had it. I think you could even argue that Bryce Young should go ahead of him just because of the upside of what he can do rest of season and if he gets an actual competent pass catcher.
Yeah, Jimmy at least gives us a little correlation with Michael Pittman, where we don't have the pass catchers, but Jimmy, and if it's a back and forth affair, at least you get those points and maybe you score enough elsewhere. What if Bryce and Jimmy are both gone? Who would you be? I think I'm Zach Wilson there.
I think I'd go Mac Jones. We've seen his one game ceiling to be pretty good. And
They got equal rushing yards. I think Zach's a little bit more mobile.
I don't have a strong preference. I'd lean Mac Jones slightly just because I think he's a better quarterback. And we've already seen him have like a 300-yard game this year with multiple touchdowns. But if you were like, we need to go Zach Wilson, I would say that's fine with me because I
we
do
would
not
go
like
Zach Wilson. I'm Zach Wilson over Mac. I'm gonna say it.
All right.
The people are here for the hard hitting 18th round quarterback analysis.
This week 4 game is now so etched in your memory. If we didn't have that week 4 game, I don't think Zach Wilson would be in the queue. So you know what? Zach Wilson, welcome to the queue.
You're not wrong. All right, and so I guess we'll just take Jimmy here.
Yeah, we'll get him correlated with Michael Pittman for week 17 in case San Fran and the Broncos both don't fire, which I think they'll fire.
So our team is Purdy, Wilson, and Jimmy G at QB, Bijan, Achane, Jeff Wilson, Latavius, and Rico. Not a room I would imagine myself drafting in the preseason, but feels actually kind of good. Ayuk, Christian Watson, Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison, Cortland Sutton, Rashee Rice, and Michael Gallup. Wide receiver is the strength of this team. And then George Kittle, Kincaid, and Knox. A high weekly upside tight end room. Floor is obviously kind of low, though.
One thing I like is we actually somehow don't have a bad position group, and we still have a lot of youth and upside on our team. I mean, we have 3 rookie is Doubt. No, I guess Dowdle's not a rookie. We have 2 rookie running backs. We have some young receivers like Christian Watson, like the guy we took before Gallup, who I can't think of right now. In between Cortland Sutton and Gallup, I'll let you label this team and then we'll look. Why am I forgetting our young buck who we took second?
In what?
Or sixth. Rashee Rice. There we go.
Oh, yes.
I was going to say we have Watson, Addison, Rashee Rice. We have 3 young receivers. We've got Kincaid, the young tight end. We have a lot of youth on our team in addition to stable position groups. And that's kind of what I always go for in literally every single best ball draft is you want to make sure that you have some young players where there's still – I think that's actually kind of where we capture the ambiguity at this point in this kind of tournament is you're getting less of like the running back room ambiguity, but we can see it playing out with some of these receivers like Rashee Rice where I think Rashee Rice, you could argue it will perform like a 5th or 6th round pick in this format. You could also argue that he ends at I could also hear it that his role doesn't improve. And this is just never a receiver offense the rest of the season. And he should have been a 15th round pick. And I think those are the kind of bets that you want to take where the range of outcomes is pretty scary. Mixed in with stability, we'd be pretty surprised if Brandon Ayuk does not have a good season. So I think the way we mixed it and pieced it together was a nice combination.
Yeah, it's a fun team. Will be fun to track. I really like the Bijan Achane start. Week 17 wise, I love a lot of our matchups. We got a Viking Green Bay back and forth affair. Seems like that could happen. We got Ayuk against the Commanders. We got Cortland Sutton against the Chargers. Rashee Rice against the Bengals. Gallup against Detroit. and the Bills beat up on the Patriots, man. Fun squad. Fun getting back in the lab and drafting with you.
Yeah, it'd been like 5 weeks since we streamed. This felt good. Everyone, if you're listening, make sure that you're following Liam Murphy at Chess Liam on Twitter. Make sure that you check out the 33rd Team Fantasy and Betting YouTube. Make sure you check out Liam's own YouTube, which is linked on his Twitter. Make sure that you're checking out Liam's recent best ball article for strategy on the 33rdteam.com. You can find my rest of season rankings and trade value chart on the 33rdteam.com as well. Liam, is there anything else that you want to mention before we get out of here and let the good people enjoy some drafts on their own?
No, just make sure you get up and running, and good luck on the season, everybody.
Sounds good. From myself, from Liam Murphy, from the 33rdteam.com. Thank you, everyone.